You'll first, either way, start out with your clay slab. It's about, half an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch thick. It won't be perfect. It may not be perfectly square, but that's okay because we're making it into a bowl. So if it's flat like this, you can do in your styrofoam bowl, you can just place it in and kind of push it down with your fingers so that it meets the bottom of the bowl. Kind of do the edges with it too so that it doesn't make a hole in the bottom. And just kind of push it with your fingers all the way to the end. Now obviously now I have some excess clay hanging out. So this is where you will kind of fill it in and then take the rest and draw a line that makes the edge of your bowl. So I'm going to use a clay tool and just kind of draw it first before I cut it. So it'll kind of make an indentation, but it's not going to cut it all the way through yet. And this just shows me where I'm going to cut it so that I have a bowl shape. And then I'll cut it the rest of the way through. Okay, and get rid of your extra clay. You might need that later depending on what kind of bowl you decided to make. Okay, so now I have all this extra clay, but what you see now is that it's not like a perfect edge. If I were to take this out of here, which you can do, it's not going to be like a perfect edge. So I'm going to take it out for a second and just kind of work with the clay a little bit and pinch it and use my fingers to kind of smooth it out and pinch the edges so that it looks like more like a bowl. You want to keep your styrofoam bowl close because you might want to put it back in and just reshape it every now and then. When clay is at this stage, it's very pliable, and so it won't keep its shape until it starts to dry. So you just don't want it to start to settle and not be in your bowl shape anymore. So I'm going to stick it back in there and just make sure that it's really how I want it. Now, I could spend a long time getting my edges perfect, but I'm not going to have you watch me do that. So we're just going to move on and pretend that my bowl is perfect. If I want things on the outside, I'm going to take it out again and turn it over so that it kind of keeps its bowl shape as I add whatever I want into the outside. So a lot of the examples we looked at maybe had some leaves or flowers or something on the outside. So you just take your extra clay, which is already in a nice thickness, and I'm going to thin it out just a little bit. The rule of clay is that you don't really want it any thinner than like the little part of your pinky or any thicker, because if it is too thick, it won't dry out. If it's too thin, it'll kind of crack and break. So let's say I'm going to make a leaf out of this or a petal. Then I can draw it with my finger before I do it, or I can draw it with a clay tool. So there's a nice leaf shape. Then I cut it out. And then I'll have my leaf shape. So depending on where I want to put it, maybe it wants to go a little bit around the edge or something like that. Depending on where I put it, I want to scratch it. So pretending this is where I would put glue, I scratch it where it's going to go. And then I have a little water cup. You guys know where these are in my classroom. If you're not in the classroom doing this, you can grab them out of my classroom or just a plastic cup, whatever you can put water in. And you just do a touch of water. So I'm just going to, I'm just going to touch the water, rub it on the clay, touch of water, rub it right here where it's going to attach. And then I'm going to attach the scratch parts together, and I kind of push and wiggle at the same time, and then it should start to stay on. Now, the more I attach, the more chance my bowl will start to kind of collapse in on itself. So kind of just watch your bowl and don't push too hard. You could also use your other hand underneath here to kind of secure it as you're attaching your leaves. Okay, so maybe I want one more leaf. This one's kind of already a shape, so I'm not even going to cut it. I'm just going to bend it and pinch it to the shape I want it. And then I'm going to scratch it, attach it, touch of water, touch, touch, and attach it. I'm going to put my hand under here to make sure it's secure. And then I have these leaves attached. I can also use these clay tools to draw. So if I wanted to put more details on my leaf, then I could. Okay, maybe I want to put some little berries or something, make it more holiday festive, then that's fine. I would just roll up a little berry, maybe 3. And it could look a little more like holly or something. I'd change my leaves a little, but that's okay. And even these little tiny guys, you might think you can just push it on and it will stay on, but no, you need to scratch it. So like tic-tac-toe is what I tell you. Tic-tac-toe, scratch it, touch of water. If you get your clay too wet, so if you use too much water, it won't dry out properly, and then when I put it in the kiln, it's going to just kind of explode because it's not dry. So there's one berry. I might put one more here and maybe one more up here. Okay, so that'll look kind of cool. I'm not going to have you watch me attach those. We'll just pretend I did. Now let's pretend I'm finished. I'm going to put my initials with my clay tool on the bottom of my bowl just by gently writing them in there. And you can see I put MM, okay, so that I can read it. If there's other scratches and stuff, you probably want to smooth those out so we don't get confused. And plus, it'll just make your bowl look nicer for the event. So I'm going to put this back in my bowl, okay, so that it starts to dry in the bowl shape. Now here's what you'll notice as you keep working with the clay and making your bowl is that it's going to start to dry out the clay pretty quickly. So that's fine, just you can't leave it out in the air forever because it starts to dry out. So that's one way you can do your bowl. Another way is to take your slab and kind of make it into a ball. This clay's a little dry. I'm going to do just about half of it. Make it into a ball and make more of like a pinch pot bowl, which is fine. It's just a different method. So this could happen maybe if the bowl that you did a second ago doesn't work out. You could just start over and do this with it. So make a little ball of clay. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. You're going to take your thumb and stick it almost all the way to the bottom. So I'm keeping this hand kind of cupped around it so it keeps the ball shape. But I'm going like all the way to the back of this clay ball with my thumb and made a pretty good hole. Then I'm going to use my thumb and my fingers to pinch around. So I stick my thumb back in there and I pinch with these fingers. So I'm pinching the clay to make it thinner. I'm keeping this hand cupped around the clay so that it keeps the bowl shape. So right now I'm pinching around the bottom of the bowl. Pinch, pinch, pinch and turn, keeping a cup shape. Now I'm going to do it around the middle. And you can see the bowl, it's starting to look more like a bowl. Now I'm going to pinch it around the edges. So this isn't going to make as big of a bowl opening as that. What I then do is I kind of drop it so that it gets that like flat bottom to it. And then I can pinch out a little bit more. So remember what I talked about, like the thickness of the side of your pinky? So that's what I'm going for here, which it's not yet. So I'm going to keep pinching and turning until my bowl feels. And I can tell, like, if my hands are this far apart, then obviously it's too thick. If it's like too thin, right? So I want my hands about that far apart as I'm pinching the clay. So I can feel with my hands what that should look and feel like. So I'm just kind of opening it up a little bit more, making it even everywhere so that it looks more like a bowl. Don't let your edges get too thin. Now this is not perfect by any means. I would work at it a little bit more to get it where I want it. maybe you can see like the edges are kind of jaggedy here. So I can take my clay tool and kind of even all of that out by just slicing off some that's not needed, smoothing it out with my finger, okay, and just making it just right. So I'm going to do a little bit more of that. Okay, so again, pretending that I had all the time you guys do to make this perfect. So then you'll just go to the same kind of steps you were just doing by adding things. So we talked about you could add things to the inside. Same method. Whatever you add just needs to be not too thick or thin. And then whatever you add, maybe this is a heart. So I'm just pinching mine to make it look like a heart. You could draw it and cut it. You can cut it however you want it to look. So I'm pinching my clay. That's the kind of the cool thing about the clay is that if it doesn't work out how you want it, you just roll it back up and try again and keep pinching. So there's an okay heart. So I'm going to scratch on the back again. Scratch where I want it, and I'm just going to put this in the middle on the bottom. I'll show you in a second what that looks like. So I just scratch where it's going to go. Touch of water here, touch of water in here. And I'm going to kind of wiggle and push it in. And then I have this heart on the bottom of my bowl. I would then take my time and kind of smooth out all of these little cuts and cracks so that it looks nice and neat. But you can see I would take my time to do that on the outside too. I can write things in here. One, I'll need to write my initials on the bottom, but I could write a saying. So some of us had on our idea sheet, we had little words and sayings, so you can write. You could use a pencil to do that too, just so it'll be a little bit more like your handwriting. Sometimes these are a little tricky to write with, but use a pencil. This is just like dirt, so it'll wipe off of your pencil, no big deal. When I'm all done with this, I'm just going to stick it in a styrofoam bowl, just so it kind of keeps its shape as best as it can. Okay. One thing, if you are writing, make sure it's not cutting through your bowl. So if I'm writing something, make sure it's not like cutting where it makes like a hole. Okay. So just keep that in mind as you're writing or doing designs. One more thing I showed you was if you wanted to do the little balls that make up the bowl, you just take your clay and you'll have a styrofoam bowl and just make about 1 inch clay balls that are about the same size. You want them as close as you can, and you'll want a bunch. So this is what I would do first. Do them all. Do them all. And then use your styrofoam bowl to fill them in. So you'll put them in to kind of line the bowl, the bowl, but make sure that you're attaching these. So these two get scratched, scratched, touch of water, attach. And then the next one gets attached, scratched. Okay, they're not just gonna stick by you pushing them close together. Okay, so I'm gonna have to attach and scratch every ball that goes in there, and then same with as I build up to make the bowl part, you have to scratch and attach there too. And then lastly, anything that you add that is sticking out. We talked about this, like there was a giraffe bowl I think I showed you where like the head was big like this. Make sure that it's not too thin and fragile. Make sure that it's attached appropriately down here with a scratch. You could also, let's say this is a giraffe head. I'm going to prop it up with the water for a second. And I attached it just right. You could make a little snake coil. I'm going to make it a little smaller. To go around the neck where it's attached. And then you kind of smooth it out so that you wouldn't be able to tell that it was there. Let me move this a little so you can see. So I'm smoothing up, and then I'm smoothing down.